So thank you both, James and Joe. But do you mind introducing yourselves to the audience in case people don't know what is Equativ or Titan, although you were in one of the slides there in the 30% group?
Go on, James, you go.
All right. Hey, everybody. My name's James Grant. I work at a company called Equativ. We are an independent ad tech platform, globally based out of 18 countries. We cover ad server, SSP and DSP functionality. We also acquired an SSAI function as well. So our interest in this particular topic really rotates around technical provision of ad serving and delivery and reporting functionalities.
Perfect. Joe.
My name's Joe. I look after advertising and retail media at Titan OS. Titan is an independent TV operating system running across Europe. We're currently the operating system for 5 million Philips TVs. We announced last year a partnership with Sony TV. And in the summer, we'll also be the operating system for JVC TV starting in the UK.
So Joe, I'm going to start with you. In one of my slides, I said in Europe, 3 TV OS companies have 70% of the market, even more. But 1 year ago, you launched a new TV OS. Why? Were you not scared? Did you think there was a need for another TV OS? Tell us a bit more. Why did you launch?
Grey hair. No, I think first and foremost, without wanting to start the panel off with an argument, I would take exception of the 70% because I think Android, which were the biggest chunk there, is actually quite a fragmented operating universe and presents quite an opportunity for us. I think why did we launch? We launched last January and already we're in almost 10 million homes. So there is clearly an opportunity for an independent operating system. You mentioned in one of your slides actually the fact that TV sales is a low margin business. TV operators are looking for new ways to make money. They're also looking for new reasons for people to buy TVs. We can help them make money by selling advertising and giving them a share of that revenue. We can help them sell TVs by offering a fast service and all of the apps on the operating system to give consumers something they might not get from a different TV set. So that's the reason.
Fantastic. So now that we know your 2 companies, how did you decide to partner together? What attracted you from Titan OS? How do you think joining forces could help advertisers?
So from our point of view, we're an independent platform, and that's important to us because it's a position in market that we want to keep. So Titan also markets itself as an independent platform, and there's a synergy there. But I think the real synergy for us, we acquired a company called Camino last year, which is a retail ad server. We're interested in building functionality for on and off-site retail data that sits in the ad decision structure, both at an ad server and then through to an SSP and then through to the buyer sort of level. As a platform that owns no media, you're going to need to make partnerships with companies that have access to that media. Titan have their own ambitions on retail, and they have their own media and audience structure. So for us, that's the attraction of the partnership.
And for you, Joe, when you heard this call saying they wanted to partner with you, how did you feel?
Excited. No, I very excited on the basis that it's really important for us to have consistency, both from an SSP perspective, but also from an ad serving perspective. And the fact that Equativ have the ability to serve ads from a retail media perspective as well as a broader CTV perspective was a really important factor. I think the other thing as well, which I'm sure we'll talk about, is the opportunity in shoppable formats today, but also over the next 2 or 3 years. And I'm very excited about some of the plans we have in that area.
So let's start from one of my slides. I spoke about Walmart buying Visio, allows them to have shoppable ads, allows them to own the end consumer. Do you see this happening in Europe, or what is this for retailers? How do you see the situation of retailers here? Are you partnering with them?
Shall I go for that one?
Yeah, sure.
I've noticed when I turn my head, I get louder, so apologies. Let's start. If we go back to basics, and most of you will know this in the room, but in terms of the definition of retail media, let's take a blender, Shark Ninja, and we'll take Currys as a retailer. Shark Ninja want to sell blenders.
Yeah.
Currys have lots of information to help them sell blenders. For example, they know that the average shelf life of a blender is 2 years. They therefore know how many of their customers bought a blender 2 years ago, so they can target them with a specific advert. They also know how many people have been browsing on their websites. So what we're looking at with retailers is how can we extend that into a new environment? And CTV arguably offers a really interesting environment for that. One, you have the impact of the big screen. So a brand like Shark Ninja can capitalize on the branding opportunities, the top of the funnel opportunities. But if that advert is directing people into store, into a retailer, that gives Currys or any other retailer a real benefit because people can act on that and there's a specific offer that they can get to. So for me, there's a huge opportunity as an OS to add CTV to that retail media proposition, share first-party data and create very addressable advertising opportunities.
And can you tell us if you're partnering with any retailer at the moment?
I sort of gave the game away a bit early, but we're partnering with Currys in the UK. We announced that a couple of months ago. We're having various conversations with similar retailers across Europe. Generally, it's electronics retailers. There's a big advantage for Currys. Currently, we share our first-party data in a clean room. We're able to understand exactly how many of their customers have bought one of our TVs and therefore how many of their customers we can target with a specific advert. Currys get commission when we use their data, so they make money from the advertising. And they also make more money when they sell more of our TVs, because the bigger our universe, the more money they make, because the more advertising we sell.
And I assume you are planning to have more partnerships soon with other retailers.
Yeah, the key markets for us are Spain, Italy, France, Netherlands.
Fantastic. So going back to the points of friction and how bad that channel Samsung experience was, is there anything you can do to avoid these points of friction where your two companies can help consumers to have an enjoyable experience? I'm going to go to that slide about the points of friction in blue here. Where can you help?
I think there's a number of people in this room who work for or have worked for ad tech. So we all know that there's a lot of common problems. How do you manage data? Do you have the rights for the data? As consumers, none of us like certain social media sites advertising to us after maybe we've been heard talking in the house. So how are you going to manage friction points like that at a user level? How do you create unique identifiers on a TV screen that's watched by many people? So from our point of view as the technical partner, that's the challenge that we have to unlock, is how do you bring in targeting using the retailer data, either from Titan or if we have retail partners that we can also hook up with. How do you bring that in? How do you target them without it being overly obtrusive? How do you manage delivery to a house? Having access to, or partnering rather with an OEM who might have individual relationships with whoever's in control of the remote, those things can make a difference. So for us, it's about what data flows come in, how do we manage the decision tree that sits against the data we see, how do we drive outcomes? And I think that's the big part for us is we're seeing a lot of talk at the moment coming out of the US about performance TV, and we think of traditional TV advertising as brand, but performance metrics have been coming closer and closer to the large screen. And I think from the ad tech partner, that's where we can help remove some of these points of friction in terms of what advertising spend you put in and what reports and outcomes you get.
I mean, I think we're at the foothills. I think it's still a very nascent area, and as your slide showed, there are still many issues with making purchases through TV. I think there are some simple things you can do today, but they involve a mobile phone and a TV advert. I think working with a retailer, like we're doing with Currys, running a specific advert, targeting that advert at an audience we know are in the purchase cycle, and sending people via their phone to a dedicated site where only that product is available to purchase is one way today of overcoming some of those issues in terms of fulfillment, payment, etc. But look, what we all want, certainly in the TV world, is that people start using their remote controls to make purchases via their TV. We're getting into the world of gaming at Titan now, and there's an issue for us in terms of, at the minute, you can get a lot of free games on your TV.
Yes.
But you need to use a Bluetooth console controller to make them work properly. Our ideal is to turn the ad remote into a gaming console and then also make it easier to make purchases via that remote. But we're not there yet.
Has anyone in this room bought anything through your TV using your remote control? Oh, zero. One person. Okay. So 99.9% of people have not enjoyed a shoppable TV experience yet.
But I remember, unfortunately, when we used to say,
Yeah.
I'll never buy a flight on my mobile phone. It's too expensive. I'll go to a desktop, right? And there's, unfortunately for all of us, there's a few of us in the room that will remember those conversations. Yeah. Will I buy off a fridge? Will I, all of these conversations. If you took the functionality in your hand of your phone and you added that to the big screen, actually that probably changes. Just because we're used to a remote control that has a clunky button design, it will change. It will change, whether we are stuck in the muds or not. It's going to change. The remote control is probably the weakest part of the chain in terms of us buying something from our screen, TV screen, I would argue.
So you like this slide here saying that maybe the remote, maybe with different brands, but do you think the remotes can be the solution if there is an...
I think that's really clear. I mean, if I look at an example with our fast viewing, so the fast channels that we have, if you look at the older devices where we don't have a button on the remote taking you to the fast channels, less than 10% of time spent watching broadcast is spent watching fast. On the new devices where there's a button that takes you directly to the fast channels, over 25% of time is spent watching broadcast. There is a direct correlation between the remote and what you do with your TV. I also think a lot of your charts, you may disagree, but my interpretation of your charts were that the TV is and remains an incredibly important part of people's homes, and people's downtime. And there's no reason why they shouldn't be using it for more things than just watching TV. I think there's a barrier, and I think the remote control is one barrier. Even trying to put your email address in using the remote is a hassle. So that does need to change. Yeah. But it can and it will. I agree with James, I think.
When you talked about the star buttons, that is a nightmare because my kids will love that for all the same reasons I will hate it. If that's my preloaded credit card, no thanks.
So we speak about challenges, remote controls. Where are the opportunities now and in 5 years' time? Do you think we're still in early stages and in 5 years' time is where you will have a perfect solution? Where are we now? Where we will be?
So I think today we're starting to see more creative formats come onto TV. And I think that's a now position. It's early. We have the functionality that allows you to do it. There was a huge furore about the Coinbase ad in the Super Bowl in January 24. And so that creative format execution and the ability to marry retail type data is coming now. In 5 years, I mean, that's a long time. So, but if we talk about removing friction from the remote, if we talk about making the TV screen much more functional as we're used to with our other screens, and then you talk about marrying up household data, there's a lot of opportunity. I think there's a lot of untapped opportunity that sits behind the TV screen today.
What do you think, Joe?
I think there's a big opportunity. I think you can look at the amount of data we currently have. If you even imagine 1 year from now, a TV operating system that enables people to log in individually rather than by a household, much like Netflix or Amazon Prime does, not only from a consumer perspective will that give them easier content discovery, from a data perspective it means as an OS we're going to understand whether they have a console plugged in, what games they're playing, what TV channels they're watching, how much time they spend watching specific adverts on an individual level. So there's no reason why we couldn't start serving advertising that works for different types of people, different kind of shoppable formats for different people within a household. For me, that's not too far away in the future. So I think it's a huge opportunity.
Since there is a lot of money on the table, 6 trillion, 6.6 in 2029, I want to make sure people in the audience have time to ask questions. Not sure if it's allowed or not, but anyone has a question you want to ask? There is a lady in red here, Natalie. What is your question? Oh, sorry, yes. Yes, questions are allowed. So, Natalie?
They are now.
I think if you look at retail media spend, you can see that it's going to be a powerhouse in terms of where it's going, and you can see from Maria's presentation that there's a move by major retailers like Walmart to have a video presence. But there's friction and there's a lot of resistance from the current providers of operating systems. Where do you see them moving that? So we're seeing a lot of things that are called commerce media, but they're in fact just data partnerships, moving beyond that to the transactional opportunity. Where do you see that? And are you enabling that? And are you going to do anything to change the experience of the remote, for instance, so that it's intuitive rather than express pressing a button? How do you see that developing?
Thank you, Natalie.
In terms of the retail media partnerships, I think today we are becoming an extension of, as Titan, of Currys' retail media proposition. They have for example, they have a specific, I'm going to use blenders again, they have a specific offer for a blender that they're running online and in store. They're looking at our data to see how many of our audience they can match, and then they're running an audio-visual advert on our CTV channels targeting those same consumers with a message that sends people directly back in to the retailer itself. That's a big difference from a traditional TV ad, where it benefits the brand.
And yes, Natalie, because this is the next question now.
Yeah.
Shoppable formats.
Yeah.
How can advertisers pay attention to creative innovation, new formats, shoppable formats?
Yeah, so this is one of the reasons why a partnership between us exists, is to reduce some of that friction and some of the conflicts that you referenced in your question. You can run formats today. So there are creative executions that allow for interaction. But often you won't have the data that maybe comes from the retailer or hooks up with the actual OEM. Those are the points of friction that we're going to iron out, that we want to examine, we want to remove. Obviously, the way we're talking about it and presenting it on stage is you have to have some kind of formal partnership between the two players. You're still going to have a fragmented landscape. I don't have the answer for that, unfortunately. But I think you have to start somewhere, and so identifying where the data flows, how you can execute it through the ad tech, and then report on it, because ultimately it's not worth anything without the measurement and reporting. Those are the points of friction we identified and said we can work on those. So we start there.
And what about retailers? What can they do in order to evolve their marketing campaigns? What they should be doing that probably they're not doing now?
I mean, I think, again, I'll go back to the point, this is the foothills for retailers, right? Retail media has blown up over the last 3 or 4 years, but it's generally been sponsored rows in store or it's been online. This is a new area. So I think the fact that a lot of retailers are looking at this area is really important. A key thing that they can do is help us access trade marketing budgets. So we're talking about below the line budgets, not above the line budgets. That involves changing the mindset of some of the budget holders in trade marketing, but it will make a huge difference if we can do that. And let's face it, most brands want to get their advert on the big screen, right? And this is a way to do that.
They want their brand in the big screen if it works.
Absolutely, but I think that's kind of the point of this is
exactly.
We're using data to look,
sure.
We're not guaranteeing it's going to work, but we're helping make TV advertising more addressable, more accountable.
We have 10 seconds. Anyone has another burning question that you want to ask these people? It's your time. Then don't complain, oh, the questions were crap, I didn't enjoy it. Who has a question that you really want the answer? It's your time.
2 seconds.
Yeah, because people like to complain a lot.
I try to make it quick then. So one of the, you call the, things, the friction, I would call the fatigue, which is the consent. So it's a nightmare on the PC side with all these, rules where I have pop-ups. And we see a big push from our friends in the US to kill the regulations and everything. What's your view on that? And who do you think should solve that issue? That I want to give my consent once. It's a yes, it's a no. And I want it, to be recorded. Any view, if you can help that, and how do you manage maybe today on your side?
So from an advertising consent perspective, we manage it pretty much the same as everybody else. It's a GDPR structure. It's clunky. It has to be issued pretty much at device level, sometimes every time. on a personal point of view, the way you referenced it, I give my consent once. I think based on the landscape, I would look at the CMPs, at the consent management platforms, and say, how is it not possible? Easy for me to say, but how is it not possible to take my consent and for me to proactively put consent into some kind of grid mapping table that is owned by the CMP that they could then pass out to the device owners or the publishers. So, like, very easy for me to say for any CMP vendors who are out there, but it feels like there's got to be a solution somewhere that centralizes my responses.
And with this note, someone is watching at their watch, meaning we are out of time. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed this session today.